What's going on, everyone? If you like the videos I'm putting out on this channel, remember to hit that like button. And remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you get all my content right to your device every time I upload. And I thank you for your continued support. There's no denying that Dragon Ball GT has a lot of problems. That's not even up for debate. And a lot of people do unfairly hate GT, but other people fairly hate it because it does have a lot of issues. So recently I released Dragon Ball In Depth, The Truth About Dragon Ball GT, and I did a lot of research, and in my research I discovered numerous things about the production behind the scenes of GT that I had no idea about. And you really should check that video out if you have not seen it yet, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to go back and I thought about GT. It's been 20 years since it got canceled in Japan, and I thought let's go back and examine GT and try to figure out what went wrong and maybe make it better. So on this video, I'm going to give you my top 5 ways to make Dragon Ball GT a better series. And of course, this is just my top 5 reasons. It's my dumb little list that I made for fun. And if you disagree with the list, or if you have your own 5 reasons to improve GT, I would love to hear it down below in the comments after you watch the video. But let's go ahead and get into the 5 ways of improving GT.
Hey, this is Master Roshi from Dragon Ball Z. You're listening and watching Geekdom 101. And if you haven't already subscribed, then look at these links and do so.
So let's talk about my 5 ways of improving Dragon Ball GT and things they could have done back then to make it better and to make the series, I think, a little less hated in my opinion. And again, I want to hear your thoughts as well. These are in no particular order. The first one I want to talk about, number 1 on the list, again, no order, is I would not have turned Goku into a kid. I think this was a huge mistake. I understand why they did it for business reasons and to depower Goku and to have like a shonen kid main character. I felt that turning Goku into a kid really turned off a lot of people to GT, including me for several years. I understand that Dragon Ball is a great series and I love Dragon Ball, but I feel like by the time we get to the Buu Saga, we are so far removed from Dragon Ball that turning Goku into a kid seems like we're on a treadmill just going in circles. And there could have been more creative ways to depower Goku. There could have been better ways to keep Goku in the spotlight and maybe not make him OP, or maybe just create stronger villains like what Dragon Ball Super did. I could still see them having the space adventure even with an adult Goku there. They could still search for the Black Star Dragon Balls and do everything the same, but I just wouldn't have turned Goku into a kid. Or if he did become a kid, I would have made it much more of a shorter story arc. Like he would have been a kid for just a very brief time and then gone back to being an adult, because by that time we recognize adult Goku as the real Goku. So that's my opinion on that. Number 4 on the list is I would have completely rewritten Pan's character. One of the things that I found kind of, I guess, you know, in a way kind of offensive and stupid is that we found out recently through interviews that Pan's character was created to mimic Bulma and to be the damsel in distress of GT so Goku can save her. That's really bad, and it's also kind of dumb and incorrect because Pan and Bulma weren't that much alike. Bulma was rarely a true damsel in distress in Dragon Ball, and when it comes to Pan, she should never be that because Pan has tons of potential, being of course the daughter of Gohan. So the idea of Pan's character, I feel, should have been written much more like Gohan was in Dragon Ball Z than what she was in GT. But then the scale sort of tipped the other way because later on in GT, I thought that Pan became annoying. I felt that during the Shadow Dragon arc, there were times where she became almost unbearable, and she went back to being a damsel in distress half the time, but the other time she was too strong and always on my damn screen. I did not want to see her on my screen that much. I like the idea of Pan being the new Gohan and Trunks sort of being the new Krillin in a way, like with the Namek arc, but I also felt like they didn't really give Pan that great moment that Gohan got all throughout Dragon Ball Z. We never saw her really achieve her potential in GT. We never saw her really hit that level. With Gohan, we saw him bravely fight, you know, Vegeta. We saw him fight Frieza. We saw him ascend against Cell. I thought that was much better writing, in my opinion, than what happened with Pan. With Pan, it was almost like they couldn't figure out what to do with her. They didn't want to make her too strong, but they accidentally wound up making her too strong to where it got annoying, but not stronger than she should be. It's a mess. I thought Pan was poorly written, in my opinion. Could have been better. Number 3 on the list that kind of irritates me is the fact that they nerfed Oob. The thing about Oob is I felt that the series GT, if they're going to be talking about new characters and pushing the next generation, Oob has to be right in there. The next generation should have been Goten, Trunks, Pan, Bra, maybe if they wanted to go in that direction, and Oob, because at the end of Z, there's so much hype around Oob being the reincarnation of Majin Buu and how he has all this potential, and Goku's going to go so far as to go live with him in his village for a little while to train him. I just felt like Oob could have done so much more in GT, but he did nothing. He was a nothing character. He winds up refusing with the Fat Boo, and he ends up losing to Baby anyways. It was just another, jobber to the stars character like what Vegeta and Trunks and the other characters were back in Dragon Ball Z and Piccolo. That, to me, is a mistake. I think Oob should have been a main character, even above Pan, in my opinion. They could have had Pan in the background, built her up for later. I always felt that Oob should have gotten more of a spotlight based on how Toriyama was kind of hinting the way the direction was going to go at the end of Z, with Oob being like the next guy. He's Goku's #1 student. How do you make him this? How do you make him less important than Pan? I don't understand that. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, what about Piccolo? Shouldn't he have gotten more of a spotlight? Well, maybe. Nothing against Piccolo, but I feel like in the Buu saga, he was relegated to being a side character, a cheerleader for most of that arc. So GT kind of continued that. I would have loved to have seen them do more with Piccolo like what Super did, but I feel like it's not necessary to make the series better because Piccolo had already been reduced to what he was earlier. Number 4 on the list, or number 2 on the list, depending on whatever you're counting up or down, is I would fix the pacing and the storytelling of the actual series itself. Now, Super has this problem too, where some parts of Super are way too fast-paced and some parts are way too slow. I feel like in Dragon Ball GT, this was in some ways a little bit worse and in some ways a little bit better depending on what arc we're talking about. I think that the Baby arc and the idea of a Sufurian coming back for revenge is a cool idea, and I love the character of Baby and the fact that he has those abilities to infect people and that he had this vendetta for so many years, but I also feel like they took too long to get there, and it was a little bit contrived that they just so happened to land on the planet M2, and that's where the whole secret plot had begun to begin with, with Dr. Miyu and all that, that whole thing. So I feel like the early episodes where they're going around exploring space could have been done a little bit more interestingly, but I also felt like the pacing was a bit slow for my taste. I think they should have introduced Baby a little bit earlier in the arc and really cranked that out, and then so many folks wouldn't have been just waiting for the next big villain. He could have been the next big villain earlier than he was. At the same time though, when you look at the Super 17 arc, I feel like that arc is a little bit too short for the story they're trying to tell. I think they rushed through that arc. I think that there are some plot holes and some things that make no sense with regards to Goku going into hell and a lot of the aspects there that were kind of dumb. And the idea behind that arc, having the villains return, having Goku fight Frieza and Cell at the same time, those are cool ideas and things that Dragon Ball fans would love, but the execution I felt was so poor. Plus, having the wonky power scale of having Android 18 appear to be much stronger than she should be, and then they kind of made Super 17 a little bit OP. Super 17 comes off a lot more like Super 13 than Super 17, in that he comes off like more of a movie villain. In fact, this entire arc is pretty much a combination of movie 12, the Fusion Reborn movie, and movie 7. You've got the villains coming out of hell, you've got the disbalance of, life and death, and then you've got an android that takes a lot more than a simple blast to kill. The idea, I liked it, but I thought the execution was very poorly done. With the Shadow Dragon arc, I felt like the early Shadow Dragons were kind of pointless. They didn't do enough creative ways to kill these things. I like some of the creativity, don't get me wrong, and I love the fact that some of them actually had characters, but the early ones were kind of pointless, and having Goku and Pan go on those adventures, fighting these dragons one-on-one, I always felt it would have been more interesting if you had other characters involved like Gohan, Vegeta, Oob actually in there helping out versus having Goku and Pan do everything. I didn't like that. I never have. And even though the arc gets a lot better near the end, the early part of the arc is, I feel, just very, very mediocre. Same thing with the baby arc. I think the baby arc dragged on a bit too long, and they really could have done away with a lot of the crap. Like, stuff like Dol Taki and the Para brothers, that's fine, but it's pointless to me. Legic was a cool villain. He looked cool. He had cool powers, but he added nothing to the story, in my opinion. Nothing. It was just random, not slice of life, but more episodic type of storytelling, which Dragon Ball was always a serialized show. Going episodic again doesn't really work, in my opinion, unless you're building to a tournament or something like that where you have enclosed stories that make sense. Super has a similar problem, but it wasn't as prevalent to me as it was in early GT. Now, the last one I want to talk about here before we close the video out, as far as improving GT, in my opinion, is fixing the transformation nonsense. And what I mean by that is this. Super Saiyan 4 is cool. I like it. I kind of wish, and again, maybe it's just me being a fanboy, but I kind of wish they would have stuck with Golden Uzaru more. I've talked in the past about how I love Golden Great Ape, because the idea of having a Great Ape with like a Super Saiyan type of color scheme where he's golden is genius, and it actually kind of matches up to the whole Vegeta thing on Planet Namek when he talked about the original Super Saiyan, and it would be cool if they sort of retconned it to where that's the true Super Saiyan form. That would have always made sense to me if they had done that, and I feel like they kind of made a huge mistake in having Goku achieve that form and then going SS4 and then having Vegeta Baby or Baby Vegeta do it afterward. I would have loved to have seen a fight between two golden great apes. We've never seen that before in Dragon Ball, and that would have been the most amazing thing. Seeing two great apes fighting, think about how awesome that would be. That's one thing. The other thing that kind of bugged me, and again, it's just my opinion, you don't have to agree with me, is I did not like how Vegeta got Super Saiyan 4. The fact that he had his wife create a device to zap him with Brutes waves and make him essentially use a cheat code and skip a bunch of levels to get to Great Ape and then eventually Super Saiyan 4, I thought was nonsense, and I thought it was also not characteristic of Vegeta. Vegeta's the kind of guy, and we know this for sure, who wants to achieve this stuff on his own. He does not like to take shortcuts, especially the Vegeta that we're seeing post Buu Saga, where he's kind of a changed man. He wants to do it all on his own, and having his wife sort of give him that cheat, again, I know why they did it, because they were facing a very serious threat, but it's still something that I would have written around that and figured out a more creative way to get there. Maybe the fact that when he was Golden Uzaru with Baby inside of him, maybe his memory, his body would have remembered that and tapped into it at will later on. Sort of like Super Saiyan God with Goku and Super. That would have made more sense to me than having his wife create a big gun to turn him into it. I never liked that plot point. Again, I want to remind you, this is just my dumb list. I actually don't hate Dragon Ball GT at all. There are things I like, things I don't like about it. These are just some ways that I thought of improving the series, just small things here and there. There's obviously even more things I could nitpick, about GT, little things here and there, like, for example, I wish some of the music was a little bit more aggressive. Again, just my opinion. But I love the GT music. I mean, I adore that all the songs on GT. Things like that I feel that maybe could have been improved upon. Also, I don't know about Goku having that darker skin tone. It doesn't really fit with the way he looked before. Things like that aren't really a huge deal to me. Just small nitpicks here and there. Let me know your list down below in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, let me know, because I'm probably going to do one about Dragon Ball Super, ways to improve Dragon Ball Super, because Super is not a perfect series. Super has a lot of problems, and in some ways, Super may actually have more problems than GT when you really dig deep. You know what I mean? But again, Super's also been around longer, so the longer a show is, the more problems it can crop up, because you have more of a chance, more of a likelihood of having issues. GT ended early, so who knows how much worse it could have gotten if it had continued, or maybe it would have gotten better. We will never know. Thank you. I love you all. If you like this video, check out some of these that I have coming up next. Have a great day.